Hello and welcome to another episode, our second episode of Business Made Simple with our family. I'm your host, Tim Mansour, and my co-host and wife,
Chrystal Mansour. Thanks once again for joining us here on Business RadioX, where we are broadcasting live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio. Like Tim said, welcome back to part 2 of our Business Roundtable episode with some very special family guests. We want to welcome once again Dr. Corey Mansour, which is Tim's son. We want to welcome Abby Mansour, which is Tim's sister. And last but not least, Michael Mansour, which is Tim's brother.
So we're going to start off, and I'm not going to talk as much as I did last time so we can get some answers from our special guest today. I'm going to start, Abby, with you. We've all been lucky in a lot of different ways. We've had our ups and downs like any family. I want to say that over and over. Nobody's going to be perfect in this world. You're always looking on the outside, looking in, and think, gosh, these people are so lucky. Everything they touch turns to gold. Again, we've talked about that. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. It doesn't work like that. But anyway, what I wanted to ask you, Abby, is how do you give back for what, you've received a lot of good things. You've been very lucky. How do you give back to the community, or how does that work with you and your company?
We were taught to give back from Daddy and Mom. I mean, it started off with our elementary school and all the different things they would do for the high schools, and then it was St. Jude's. Daddy had St. Jude's for 16 years, I think. And
giving away the Tootsie Rolls.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, no, that was different, the Tootsie Rolls. St. Jude's was for the hospital, St. Jude's Hospital, and that was in Griffin. In fact, I won the first scholarship ever given by St. Jude's, and it was because, I'd been working with Daddy a long time. And then when you guys moved to Rome, Dad went with Tootsie Roll Drive for the mentally handicapped. So I give back mostly, or a good bit of mine is through St. Jude's, because I just don't think there's a better charity in the world than St. Jude's. I give to the Salvation Army as well. But then I do some free work, like free seminars every once in a while. And things have changed a lot in the way that we do work now that this COVID-19 has come out, and we've all had to be really flexible. And so thinking out of the box has had everything to do with trying to keep businesses afloat. And so some of that work I do for free, some of it I do, for funds. But one of the things I've recently been doing is designing a bakery for someone, and it's called Garnet's Bakery, and it's in Buckhead. But, I mean, what a horrible time to start a bakery. So you have to really get creative, which is my favorite thing, to think out of the box and do things like drive-in testing and different types of things. So I give back every way I know how to give back. I know we did the Heart Association at one time.
Well, so you never can do too much for the community and for the people around you, and actually taking care of people that work with you. So many people, even in today when we do these houses, we have people that come over. I mean, we call them, they're there for us 24/7, and you just want to take care of them. And little things like paying them on time or paying them early or doing things and letting them know they are a part of your success. So I think that's great. And talking about thinking outside the box. Any business that you're in, things are going to change, and that's the world. I mean, we're now doing podcasts, and when I was coming up, there was no such thing as a podcast. So you always have to look at thinking outside that box. Think of different things that are happening. Just because it works one way this year, it might not work the same the next. So never give up. Always just look for a different way to make it happen. Michael, I want to get back to you about the partners. That's a tough job. When you did work with your partner, now do y'all have an agreement or something? How does that work? Because again, I look at partners, what if something happens to him? What if something here? And legally, I just think that as a partnership, you just have to have some type of coverage for each other. How does that work with you and your partner?
Well, I've been in business with a couple different people, and we'd have the written agreements to where if something happened to me that he would buy out my half and give it to my wife, and the same with him and his wife, and that's kind of how we agree on it with Carrie and my business now. And the thing about partners, like you said, though, is you go in business with people and you believe you know them, but you don't know them until you really are in business with them and you're dealing with money. because people change when it involves money. And so you have to really make sure that it's somebody you're comfortable with and somebody that you trust before you go into a partnership with them.
Exactly. And what Michael's talking about too, and I think I tell a lot of people about this, there's nothing wrong with a partner or partners. But the thing is, you want to make sure that that is the partner that you're going with. And what I mean by that is, as you go into it, we've said this on other episodes before, if you ever sit down with a partner and say, look, we don't have to write up anything, we trust each other, I want you to get up from that table and run out that door as quick as you can. It has nothing to do with trust on that part. What you're saying is, what we're talking about today, I don't know how many people are listening. I hope thousands and thousands. But anyway, each and every one of you hear things different. And as we're going into business together and we're sitting there talking about it, everyone hears it different. And I want to have it on paper. And I want to have it signed to protect both of us, number one. Number two is, another thing that is important is, like Michael said, have a buyout clause. And you can buy insurance for things like that, so that if somebody does pass, which you hope it doesn't happen, you're not in business with a husband or a wife or a friend that they had that takes it over. So always have it where you have a buyout clause, and that can easily be done by insurance. Corey, I tell you, with you, of course, you went through school with another sharp guy, kind of reminds me of you. His name's Andy, a great doctor, and is actually his wife's a doctor too. She's amazing also. But I guess, how did it come to be? Because you've met so many people through your life in this medical field. How did you pick Andy? How did that work?
So I think over the years, especially when you're working long hours in the trenches, you see the low of everyone, and you quickly find out he would not want working with you, or who you'd not want to get in business with, who wouldn't have your back at the drop of the hat. And so I was lucky enough to, like you said, find Andy during my training. I believe just finding the right fit and the right partner can be wonderful, but can also be a downfall. I think, like you're saying, it's very important to lay out the terms up front. My wife being an attorney, she's all about
she's
that.
On it, right?
She is 100% on that. And just find someone with the same kind of core values. Me being more analytical type, it is nice to have someone that is more of a driver and that can sort of complement our strengths, complement each other and make you better than you would be, just on your own. I just think, him having the same values as me, you can see how he acts with his family, how important his friends are, and he is like family to me. And I think that's sort of what has led me to the partnership, although you always are concerned that something will go wrong eventually, but so far everything has worked out greatly.
That is terrific.
Well, I think he feels the same about you, from us being around him and just meeting him and his wife Emily both, and the kids. We've seen them several times. He seems to feel the exact same way about you, so it's not like a one-way street.
Right.
It's a win-win for both of you, just in the friendship field or the medical field, and then now in business.
And I actually did, while we were in training, I did the anesthesia for Emily for her C-section at the birth of Cody. So that was a very, very special
and that
moment
was his
for me.
wife. That's unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Well, the next thing I wanted to say is we were going to talk a minute about startup cost. That's very important, because we had written a book, and Abby was a big part of that, and Chrystal, of course, of writing our book, Starting Business with Zero. And, a lot of people out there think, well, somebody, just start a business and they have money or something like that. Most of us that started businesses didn't have a lot. So I guess the question I'd have, and we're going to ask each and every one of you this, in the business that you're in now, what was the startup cost, Michael? And we'll kind of start up with you, which could be as little as none to whatever. But just if somebody wanted to get into the buying the storage bins, do you have to have a lot of money? What is the best way, Michael, for that to happen?
I think it's kind of like gambling, because you're buying a unit, betting on it having enough in there to pay for itself. And in gambling, what Daddy always told us is you only bet what you can afford to lose. And I think that is so true in this business, because if I go in and I overspend on a unit and I start losing, which is what I've seen a lot of people do, they want to get into it because they watch TV and I want to do this, and they come and they just bid it up. They don't last long. They're gone pretty quick. And so I'm always looking at the unit as I'm buying it, because as you know, like on TV, you get to look. You don't get to go in, you don't get to touch anything, but you get to look and you figure out pretty quickly what will sell and what you can get for it. and I try to base it on that. So I've spent $5 on a unit, and I've spent $1,000 on a unit. You know, so it just depends on what's in there and what I believe in. There's certain things I look for that I don't want to bid on. You know, there's, you know, if it smells like cats, I don't want to deal with it because it's harder to sell. If it smells like cigarette smoke, I don't want to deal with it because it's harder to sell. And so I have to know going in what I can do and what I can't do and what I can get out of it. So the startup cost can be what you make it. You like I said, you can start with very little and buy some and start doing that and build up. Or you can, you know, we've started doing estates now where people will call us and say, hey, my mom died and we want this stuff gone. Would you come and look at it and see what you think? And so we may go to an estate and really want it and spend a good bit of money, or we may go and say, hey, it's not a lot of money here, but we'll clean it out for you. You know, we'll sell stuff and make a little bit. So it's just different ways. So there's not like a set amount, obviously. It's just what you make it.
Well, I think part of what's made you so successful is not only your relationships that you've built in Carrollton and through the south side of Georgia, but it's also your networking that you constantly are doing. And it is amazing the amount of vendors that you have built in what you do. How many vendors exactly do you deal with?
Oh, I have no idea. We deal with a bunch of different people, and
right.
we know what certain people collect, and
right.
so people say, well, he bought that from you for $40 and he sold it for $80. That's great. I'm okay with that. He made money, I made money. So you don't get selfish. You don't
right.
get stingy.
Exactly.
You just move
Greedy.
stuff. And it's kind of like Walmart, moving as much as you can for a little bit less money.
Right.
And like Tim said, I'll meet somebody for $5 or $10, and that builds relationships.
It definitely does.
And they know they can trust me. They know that if it doesn't work for some reason, I'm going to replace it and take care of it. And so that's the biggest part of it, is those relationships.
Definitely.
And that's what it's all about. And that's great. So there's businesses out there that you can get where you're not going to borrowing millions of dollars or $100,000, because going to banks, like I said before, you have to sell yourself to make it happen. You can start with zero, but everything's about how you sell yourself, and always put yourself in that position. If you were given money, what does it mean to you if somebody tells you they're going to work harder than somebody else? It doesn't mean anything, and I hear that every day. It's what you're going to do, and here's A, B, and C, and it can happen. There's people out there that will give you money, will work with you, but you just have to sell yourself. Abby, in your business, is there startup cost with you, or how does that work?
Well, I've been lucky in that the first thing I do is contract out my jobs. So I have a good network of people, just like you couldn't do the flipping without your particular network.
Exactly.
If it's something I don't normally do, like a huge floral wedding, I'm not going to do that whole wedding. So I have people to call. That keeps my costs down because it's per job. I hire per job, which helps me tremendously. But then I do have people I keep going to, and they give me business and I give them business. So I didn't have a huge startup cost. I mean, recently my husband bought a van for us, a big van, and because I'm lugging things like Christmas trees and things, the only prerequisite I had was I have to be able to stand up in the van. Well, I'm only 5'3" probably, and so that wasn't so bad, but having a van that you can stand up in helps tremendously, getting things around and dragging things.
And I think that's important what you're saying, because I deal with a lot of people that are in business, and I love going. I don't care what kind of business you're in. I love talking about it. I've got some friends of mine that are in business, and maybe they're not they're doing the old-fashioned way of stuff. Maybe the invoices, the way they do invoices, or the way. I have one friend that has a truck, or a car, I'm sorry, and he's pulling a trailer around. And I said, hey, why don't you look at maybe buying a truck? I know it costs money, but sometimes it'll save you money because you'll have everything in one place. Or doing the invoices. Nowadays they have so many things on the internet. You can send your invoice out and it'll automatically send a notice to them if they hadn't paid it a certain time. You don't even know that. So you need to make changes as the world grows. You need to grow with it. But it's great that there's businesses out there that you just don't have to have a whole bunch of money to get it started.
No, there's always something to do. It's
That's
just
exactly
thinking
right.
out of the box. I know that you are, Chrystal, you are such an asset, because if there's something you have to learn, you go learn it. And it's amazing to me sometimes the things that you learn, because you do have much more patience than I do. I could never sell insurance or be an attorney. I could do the arguing, but I couldn't do the studying and the constant, So it's all about the people around you.
100%. That's what makes us successful.
Well, in business, all businesses start with something. They have to start with some kind of capital, some type of upfront money, whatever that you're kind of into. And Corey, I have a question for you. As far as I know, you've been doing the dental sedations for a while, and when you talk about the medical field, for a lot of people, their ears go up and they kind of say, "Wow, that's expensive. That's going to be costly." And I know as you're kind of getting your practice going with your partner. Tell me why you decided into the anesthesia field. I know that you did a lot when you were in medical school and in your residency, which was something that I learned as we kind of went on this journey, that you experienced a little bit of everything in the medical field. Mm-hmm. How did you settle into anesthesiology?
So it all started with Dr. Moeller, as I described earlier. He's an orthopedic surgeon. So after shadowing him several months, I was like, I'm 100% going to be an orthopedic surgeon. I had no idea that would change. I got into medical school, and then you start doing rotations into different subspecialties. Every subspecialty I went into, I'm like, oh no, now I want to do this. Now I want to do this. Right. It just changed. I remember one point I was in an orthopedic surgery on a 12-year-old girl. We were doing a complete spine case, so pretty much fusing her entire spine because she had horrible scoliosis. That was a 12-and-a-half-hour surgery where I just stood there and retracted, didn't go to the restroom, didn't eat, didn't do anything. And at that time I said, I love being in the operating room, but I also like, getting lunch. So I looked on the other side of the drapes. And anesthesiologists, as a lot of times you see them as the internal medicine doctor of the operating room. You see the patient before, you take care of the family during and after the procedure. So it just really touched base with me, and just that's sort of what led me to anesthesia. And the anesthesia, you can go into so many different things. You can work in the ICU. You can do pain management. You can deliver babies. It's a fantastic field, and I haven't regretted it for a second.
Well, if you don't mind, Corey, a lot of people don't understand, because I never even heard of, thinking outside the box again, what you do now with when you do the dentistry. Of course, I didn't know the kids had to be put to sleep and they had that many things. Tell us a little bit about how that works, because a lot of people don't understand it.
Absolutely. So there are many dentists, especially pediatric dentists, throughout just the Metro Atlanta area where we live, and many of these children, they don't have good dental care. Let's say they have a bottle in their mouth for when they're going to sleep, and then just rots their teeth. So many of them need, at 2 years of age to 3 years of age, have to have crowns on 10 to 12 teeth, which is very traumatic. It's a very long procedure, and they just wouldn't be able to sit there and let you work on their mouth. I don't know if you've ever tried to get a 2-year-old to sit still for 45 minutes. It just doesn't happen. So what we do, we go in there and we offer anesthesia sedation services for these children. We speak with the parents, make sure they're comfortable, and we help them sleep through the procedure, sort of like a colonoscopy. We're there watching their blood pressure, their vitals, making sure they're breathing okay. And that really helps the parents sort of have an ease of mind, just knowing that someone is there watching them. You hear all these stories in the news where, a kid died when the dentist was trying to do a procedure on his own. So it is really nice to be able to offer these services and help the kids and let them get through this difficult time in their life.
That's unreal. Last question for you, Corey. I wanted to just ask you, financially, to become a doctor and go to school for that 100 years, how does that work?
So honestly, it all usually starts with loans. Obviously, if you're lucky enough, like I was lucky, where my parents helped me as much as possible, which was great to help get through, undergrad and the Hope Scholarship, things like that. If you go to, instead of going to private schools, go to other schools, such as, like I went to the University of Georgia, Medical College of Georgia, where the tuition is a little bit less, but you still have great opportunities. At the end of the day, you're still a doctor, just as anyone that went to Harvard or went to some of these very expensive schools. But you can get debt up to $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, and that it's almost like a mountain that you're concerned that you'll never climb over. So when you're coming out of school, you're wondering, okay, should I just go get a job straight away, or am I able to start my own practice? And that gets very difficult decisions to try to start to make. Luckily, there are some lenders that understand that you have student loans and are willing to lend to doctors and help you out in those times.
I know that a lot of your friends, you got to be careful because you got to think about it as these doctors have been at school all their life. So I know that once y'all graduate, it seemed like there's a rush of people wanting to lend y'all money because they know you're going to make the money. And I hate to say this, but some of the doctors make some crazy decisions. I mean, they're buying cars for thousands of dollars a month and all because they think they can make that payment, which I understand, but it's tough. So, I'm glad you've done what you've done and made the decisions you have, but it's easy to get away from it. What I'd like to finish with is maybe go down and start with Michael on any suggestions he has to give to that next person that either wants to become a policeman, which I think is very important, and or get into the business of doing the storage bins. And we'll just kind of go through each one of y'all, and y'all just kind of tell us what y'all feel and want to leave with the people that are listening to us today.
Okay, so like I said, I started policing many, many years ago, and it's definitely changed over the years. I still consider it a profession. I still consider it to be a very respectful profession. I'm proud to be a cop. I always have been, always will be. We ask that people, when they do consider being a police officer, and it's kind of like I tell my students, I teach at West Georgia and I teach criminology classes, and I recruit those kids. I recruit them into the field, and I tell them, guys, it's time to start growing up. You're juniors and seniors in college. You need to start doing the right thing even more so. You don't want to get caught, shoplifting. You don't want to get caught, drinking underage. You don't want to get a DUI because that's going to hurt you in this field. And it's kind of funny to say this, but I tell them, one of the things we do is we talk about drug use. And if I look at you and say, when's the last time you smoked pot, and you look at your watch, that's not a good sign. and so I try to tell them it's time to grow up and to be an adult. And so to stop doing that because you're not going to get a job. So I think a lot of what I tell people about being a cop is you've got to start living that life even before you become a cop. And I've always believed that I represent that badge, and my biggest fear is that I'll lose that badge or I'll disappoint my family. And that's always been my gut, is that I'm going to do the right thing no matter what, because I'm not going to embarrass my family. And Tim will tell you, and Abby will tell you, Daddy was big on the Mansour name, and you protect our name no matter what. And that's what I try to do in being a cop, and that's what I tell people about being a cop.
Well, you've definitely succeeded.
As far as the storage buildings, it's fun. It's just fun, and it's just cool.
That's
and
your
so
downtime, right?
That's my way to relax.
Right.
I can spend hours in there looking through stuff and enjoying it and having a good time, finding something silly, finding something cool. And it's just something that if I recommend, first of all, is go watch it like I did. Go, be analytical as Corey is, and study it and understand what you're getting into before you get into it, and understand that you're going to lose money sometimes, but that it's fun. And so I tell them to come watch or ask questions like I did. I picked people's brains at those auctions before I ever even bid, because I wanted to know what they were looking for, what they were thinking about before they made a bid.
So do you have people that come shadow you?
Oh yeah, I've had several people that would come watch me and work with me and see how I do it and ask questions. So I've had a lot of folks that do that, and I've had some that did it a little bit and then realized it wasn't for them, because like Corey and Tim both said, you got to hustle. And this job, especially in the storage building, is you got to hustle because you got to sell. And so I'm always looking for somebody that's looking for, sports memorabilia, or somebody that's looking for Coca-Cola stuff or something. And once I learn those people, I go back to those people.
Definitely.
That is
Definitely.
unbelievable.
Well, like they say, one person's junk is another person's treasure. That's
No
right.
doubt. Yep.
Abby, how about you?
Why don't you repeat the questions? I got so involved in him, I'm thinking, now, wait a minute.
It's just information that you would want to
Tell
give to
someone
that
else.
next person, to go into the field that you're in and actually try not to make the same mistakes that we have. And, it just seems like it helps people out.
Yeah, because you were very successful in the pharmaceutical sales for many, many years. Do you ever have someone shadow you when you do like St. Jude's or like event planning or some of your decorating events?
When I started, when I was president of the Cedar Club, one of the first things I did was start a mentoring program for each position that my officers had and that my people had, because if something, we are getting older, and if something happens, you got to have somebody know how to pick it up. So that was, really, really important to me. I think when you're trying to decide if you need to go into a business, you need to re-examine your talents and sometimes you can't do it for yourself. Someone else sees a job that you had, maybe in banking, that had, you would think, nothing to do with creativity, and then you start pulling out their talents from their resume and you realize they could do this, and it might be even researching. You might have learned that you're a good networker or you're a good, analytical type person, but if you can analyze your talents and then mentor people and and be mentored by people, then you got it made. I mean, right now, I think it's kind of like everybody thinks they're a photographer, everybody thinks they can design, and everybody thinks they can do so and so. Well, everybody can, probably, not to the same level. So your job or my job is always to keep getting better and better and better. I remember when you guys were doing flipping when you first started, you would call me in to talk about colors and stuff. Well, you don't need me anymore. And that happened way too fast. But, I mean, Chrystal started taking care of all of it. And I think at first it was just more of us learning what would sell. Because you don't do your own taste. And then when I got to flip the condominium, it was in a whole different level area. And they were an artistic group, so I could do some really wild things, and ended up selling that for $50,000 more than anybody else in the complex. So
it worked out well.
Yeah,
that's good.
You just got to learn what you can do.
You've always been creative with trends, and it's always been great because you've been able to pivot, like in today's times and in today's world, where it's changing. Like
all the
almost
time.
like every second. Yeah, so you've really been good, and you've kind of taught me that, is to be able to kind of be open-minded enough to be able to change as the trends change, because lots of times we always talk about it, it'll always come back around.
It does too, yeah.
Okay.
And then the other thing that we have as a family is we all know how to sell, and we got that from Daddy and Mother actually, and we all know how to teach, and all of us have done it. Every one of us. And I think that gives back, whether people realize it or not. Teaching others gives back. So
100%. Last but not least, Corey, we're going to leave it with you. Tell us any information you could give to the next person that wants to become a doctor, whatever type it may be.
Yeah, of course. Sort of building on what Uncle Michael and Aunt Abby said, I would just make sure whatever you do that you're passionate about it. If you don't love it, if you're not sure that okay, this is the only career for me, then I'd recommend probably doing something else. It's a good idea to, like they're saying, shadow, get as much perspective as possible, obtain as much hands-on experience as you can, and you really get to know, like, will I be happy at the end of the day or not? Because it doesn't matter if you're making millions and millions of dollars. If you're not happy with what you're doing, it won't be worth it. So I think that's the biggest thing.
That's
Can
so
I
true.
Add one thing. One of the things we learned was you have to be willing to do everything. If you ask someone else to do it, you've got to be willing to go do the trash cans and go do the toilets and do whatever cleaning or whatever work you have to do. And you were a great example of that, and my parents were, and I think you are, Michael. And so it makes all the difference in the world that your people respect you because you will do what you ask them to do as well.
Exactly. Remember, they don't work for you, they work with you, and that's what makes you successful. I appreciate each and every one of you being here today. Of course, I love you, your family, and I just think the world of you, and just so proud of each and every one of you. And I'm going to let Chrystal finish it off.
Yes, we hope you enjoyed our Part 2 series of our Business Roundtable with our special family guest today. Please join us again for the next episode of Business Made Simple. You can also visit our website at www.mansour, that's MANSOUR, international.com, where you can learn more about us. You can see and learn more about a book. We mentioned that earlier, a book that we wrote. It is Not Impossible, Building a Business from zero. You can also ask a business question and catch up on all of our episodes of Business Made Simple. We look forward to talking to you again here on Business Made Simple. And until then, watch what you wish for. It might come true.